Tonight on Phantoms and Monsters Radio, we lace up our boots and follow 10 hikers and campers into places where the trail does not just lead through the woods. In these stories, the path clips the edge of something else. Some step into it for a few strides. Some are stalked along it for days. Some are placed gently back into their world when they should have died. Others catch a glimpse of a world that wanted very much to keep them. You will hear about a skeletal beast standing 20 feet from a tent in Devon, a fall in Connecticut that should have ended with a shattered skull, a faceless whistler in Wisconsin, and a small yeti stepping aside on an icy ledge before climbing away like it owns the mountain. We will walk past a phantom house in Ohio, meet a 5-foot mantis on a ridge in the Sierra Nevada, stand over a surgically opened deer in Maine, and sit with a man in a Cascades who spent 15 days being played like live prey. Then we'll step through a portal on Saddle Blanket Mountain and face a hairy hand reaching for a human throat before finishing on the Smoky Mountain Trail, where an upright, dog-like being leaves one hiker oddly changed for the better. Now, some of these accounts feel like predation. Some look a lot like protection. All of them carry the same message. The wild is still wild. And some of what lives in it does not care whether we believe it or not. This is Phantoms and Monsters Radio, where the veil lifts one story at a time, and thank you for joining us. Now, our first story comes from Devon, England, and it starts as a recovery trip. A 16-year-old who has broken his back in a serious accident decides he's finally ready to move on with his life again. The body has healed enough for a light adventure. The mind needs something more than hospital walls. So his mother drops him off in the countryside in a patch of forest that feels quiet and private. The kind of ground that seems perfect if you're young and you want nobody around. He does what most of us would do. He sets the tent quickly before the light dies, cracks the cider, and lets a little bit of YouTube noise replace the silence of the woods. The first hint that something is off is subtle. His phone battery drops faster than it should, even while it's plugged into a charger. That alone might not mean much. Bad cable, tired battery. It's easy to ignore, right up until the sound of the forest changes. He hears heavy footsteps in the underbrush, not a single set of boots, but what sounds like dozens of footfalls at once, pounding towards a tent. In a moment, his mind goes straight to very human fears: an angry landowner, a drunk walker looking for trouble, someone with a gun who does not appreciate a teenager camping on private property. He does sensible things. He unzips the tent, puts his hands up to show he's no threat, and steps out ready to explain himself. There's nobody there. No one is on the path. No human shape between the trees. Just the kind of silence that does not feel like usual quiet. The footsteps that are nearly on top of him cut off in an unnatural stillness. That is when the dread hits him. Not in his thoughts, but in his body. He slowly turns his head and realizes he's not alone. Standing about 20 feet away is something 5 foot tall and wrong. It looks like a hairless, emaciated dog standing there, and yet not quite dog-like at all. The body is skeletal. Its face is blank and frozen in a snarl, lips pulled back far enough to show rows of jagged teeth. It's not advancing. It's just there, utterly present, utterly alien to his experience of the natural world. Fight or flight does not kick in. This is a deeper freeze some witnesses describe, when their nervous system shuts down everything except the instinct to hide. He dives back into the tent, zips it shut as if that thin fabric is a wall, and curls into a ball on the floor while his mind tries to protect itself from what his eyes just registered. Time becomes strange. Eventually, he fumbles on the phone. The battery's dead. He swaps to a portable charger and waits through an agonizing stretch until the screen finally blinks back to life at 3% power. Just enough to send one message. He sends his prearranged code to his mother with his location pin: emergency extraction. Come now. The phone dies before she can respond. Hours pass. Every small crack of a twig, every brush of movement outside the nylon becomes that skeletal thing in his imagination. He is convinced that if he steps outside again, it'll be waiting. At some point, the sound of an engine reaches him through the trees. He risks a look and sees his mother's car at the edge of the site. There is no careful breakdown, no collecting gear, he grabs his bag and runs, leaving the tent, the supplies, everything except his body behind. He never sees the creature again. Now, to this day, he allows for the possibility that stress and fatigue played tricks on his senses. He's not someone who lightly claims supernatural experiences. But what he cannot shake is the feeling that something in those private woods was already there, waiting, and that it took his pleasure as a chance to make its point. Some places do not want you to be there. Some things do not need to move toward you. They just let you see them once, and you never come back. Now, that first story brings us right to the edge of predation. Our next case steps into something much stranger. It's not about something that is trying to scare a hiker away. It's about something bending physics, just enough to keep him alive. Now, our second report comes from Gay City State Park in Hebron, Connecticut. It's spring. The witness is alone by choice. His wife is at home, pregnant, so he takes the long outer loop trail, roughly 5 miles from the deep woods, or through the deep woods, to enjoy a quiet day and clear his head. There is a steep downhill section paved entirely in stone. Not flat rock, but loose boulders of the size of soccer balls and yoga balls. The whole slope is a field of hard rolling obstacles. Any misstep there is going to hurt. This is not his first time on that trail. He likes to run, to hop from rock to rock on his way down, and he does what he has done many times before. Now, halfway down the mountain, something goes wrong. He misses a stone, or his foot catches, and in the next instant, he should be slamming into the rocky ground. Instead, he has the clear sensation of the terrain sliding underneath him as he's being carried or floated through the air. Gravity seems to be stepping aside, then everything goes black. When he comes back to himself, he's lying on his arms and stomach in a gap between boulders that he described as just enough to hold his body. His legs rest on a rock behind him. His shins are bruised deeply from the impact, which makes sense. What does not make sense in his head, his torso, his spine, there's no damage, no concussion, no broken bones, nothing that matches the fall he knows he took. He stands, takes stock, calls his wife, and tells her that he is all right, though he does not really understand why. For most people, the story would end there. Lucky break on the rocks. But he does the right thing. He goes back a few days later when his body has calmed down, determined to find that exact pocket between the stones, the space that saved his life. But he can't find it. He searches up and down that slope and finds no cavity big enough to cradle a prone human body the way he remembers. The entire hillside is an interlocking field of hard stone that offers one likely outcome if you fall: head trauma. He knows he should be dead or severely injured. Instead, he's alive, confused, and still rattled years later. You have already added your note to this one, and I agree. We are looking at either a classic intervention by something that can move a human body in mid-fall, or a brief slip into an alternate alignment of the terrain, where the rocks did temporarily give him that one safe space before reality snapped back into place. Now, in the first case, something in the woods let a young man feel pure terror. In the second, something enables another man to live. Our next group does not get a rescue or a direct threat, at least not in the physical sense. They have a question, a whistle, and a face that refuses to resolve, no matter how hard they look. Now, this third report comes from Lake Kagoza State Park in Wisconsin in October 2024. A group of friends is camping and geocaching, doing what many people on those trails do, enjoying the last light of the day as they circle a prairie ringed by forest. The sun has dropped just behind the tree line. Visibility is still good. Flashlights are not needed yet. The first thing that changes is the soundscape. The bugs go quiet. The birds stop. Even their own voices fall off. Then something whistles at them from the woods. It is a sharp, bone-chilling whistle that cuts through the silence and drops the whole group into an instant focus. No one speaks. Then comes a second whistle, this one more broken up, less perfect, the kind of sound that might easily be written off as a human trying to get attention. The woman telling the story calls out a firm hello, looking for that rational explanation. She wants whoever this is there to reveal themselves and explain why they just whistled twice at a group of strangers. A voice answers, coming around the bend of the trail toward them. I thought you were a dog. That's a strange line to open at twilight on a quiet trail, but it's just plausible enough to keep everyone from bolting. The figure passes the group. Our witness, who makes a point of memorizing faces for safety reasons, cannot make out facial features at all. She assumes it's the adrenaline or nerves and keeps moving. As the group, they agree the encounter is odd, but obviously not dangerous. They decide it's time to get off the trail. On the way back to the car, all four of them scan the surroundings. They are on the edge, but still trying to treat this like a strange human meeting. That's when the situation escalates. The exact figure appears again at the edge of the trail, this time closer to the woods, turned away from them, staring out over the field. The group continues to walk, trying not to react. In a flat, strangely dry tone, the thing speaks again. Who is that guy? It doesn't turn out to look at them. It just comments. Our witness, still wanting a logical structure to cling to, assumes it must be referring to her boyfriend behind the group. She answers automatically, the same guy from earlier. They do not stop. They do not engage. They walk, and they do not break the silence until they're safely off the trail. Back at camp, they debrief. That is where this encounter takes on a different weight. Each of them reports independently that in both passes they could not see a face. Not an obscured face, not one blurred by bad light, a kind of smear or fog where the eyes, nose, and mouth should have been. They could detect the general structure of the head. They could see where the features should have been, but there was nothing there. Because it whistled and because it felt wrong, they labeled it as a skinwalker, even as they acknowledged that culturally skinwalker lore is not rooted in that part of Wisconsin. In your files, this may fit better in a category of humanoid mimics or ultra-terrestrial intelligence that can approximate a human form but have trouble with the face, which is often the most challenging part of our pattern to reproduce. The sense of being watched continues into the night. The witness, who is spiritually inclined, says she took steps to protect herself before sleeping. But she also notes that there have been strange encounters in her life since that night. Something may have tagged her. It may have simply taken an interest. Now, we've gone from a skeletal thing in Devonshire to a face that never reasonably appears in Wisconsin. Now, let's change elevation and culture now and walk out onto the narrow mountain trail in Nepal, where a very strange kind of figure is waiting on the ice. Now, during the winter of 1983 to 1984, a graduate student joined a trekking group bound for Everest Base Camp. This is not a summit bid. It's a classic mountain pilgrimage which stops at monasteries along the way to let the body adjust to the altitude. It is cold, stark, and quiet. In winter, the higher elevations are nearly deserted. The pack train goes ahead that day to set up camp. Hikers move on their own, each at their own pace along the narrow trails that cling to the sides of the mountain. Our witness reaches a sharp corner on the ledge where the path runs along a small ice fall. He steps around it and finds that he's not alone. Standing in the trail is a primate that should not be there. It's 3 to 4 foot tall, thickly covered in reddish hair like an orangutan, with long arms and a musculature of a natural hiker. For 10 seconds, maybe less, they look at each other. There is no scream, no charge, no display of aggression. Then the animal turns, climbs up to the 20 to 25 foot ice face with fluid, practiced movements, and disappears over the top. He is left feeling nonplussed more than afraid. It is an odd, almost gentle encounter. Then he reaches the Sherpa guide and describes what he saw, and the guide gives him a name, Yeti. Through broken English, the witness learns that to the Sherpa, Yetis are not a single giant white monster. The word covers a range of wild beings in the region, some small, some large, some more ape-like, some more mysterious. I had spoken with this witness myself and vetted his details. For our purposes tonight, this is important because it reminds us that not all these stories sit at the very edge of reality. Some are exactly what they sound like. an intelligent, undiscovered primate living in terrain that most humans visit only in passing, recognized by local people and folded into their language under a name that has become myth in the West. Now, from a small shore-footed ape on the icefall, we move back to the American heartland, to another ridge, another road, another presence that reaches into a hiker's reality with something that looks familiar at first glance, a house with every light on. Now, this fifth report takes us to Portland, Ohio, an old river road along the Ohio River. Our witness practically grew up there. His extended family lives on that road. He knows every gravel lane, every bend, every fishing spot, and every hill. It's his second home. Tonight, he is camping on his aunt and uncle's lower land near the river with friends, doing what they had done many summers before: fishing, laughing, drinking, and late walks on the back roads. At one point, he and two friends decide to take a short hike. One of them is completely sober. They're loud, relaxed, and confident. There's no expectation of anything strange. Then he notices something out of the corner of his eyes. In the distance, on a road he knows well, stands a house lit up as if every switch is on. Windows are blazing, structure clears against the dark. He stops and points. His friends at first thought nothing of it. It's just a house, except the witnesses know with absolute certainty that there are no houses there. There has never been one at that location. They walk closer on the gravel road, and as they close the distance, the situation shifts from odd to terrifying. Something appears on the road about 20 foot ahead of them. The description is brief and blurred by adrenaline. They do not stand and study it. All three of them break and run flat back to the camp. The next day, he drives the same road in daylight in the truck just to confirm what his memory insists on. There's nothing there. No house, no foundation, no structure that could have been mistaken for a home in the dark. Months later, a friend brings over a copy of the Mothman Prophecies. Our witness has never heard of the Mothman legend. He watches the film and becomes almost panic-stricken as he recognizes the pattern and the kind of form he and his friends saw that night. He calls his hiking partner and tells him to watch the movie. When that friend calls back, he is nearly hysterical. They both know that whatever they saw on Old River Road matches closely with the archetype they had no conscious knowledge of at that time. This is just one more point on a larger winged humanoid and Mothman style map. It also adds a layer that we see in other encounters. The environment can be manipulated. Structures can appear where none exist in everyday reality, like stages, sets, or lures. The house with every light on may not have been a house at all. It may have been a projected front, a way to pull three men deeper into a zone where something was waiting. Now that's a good place to shift gears from winged humanoids into something even stranger. We're going to go back west now to a high ridge in the Sierra Nevadas, where the rock ring-like metal and something insect-like and intelligent drops in for a closer look. But first, so if you're enjoying tonight's presentation and want to hear more stories like this, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to Phantoms and Monsters Radio. It really helps us out to reach more people who are searching for answers about the unexplained. Make sure to click the notification bell so that you won't miss any of our live shows. Now, our next witness writes in after hearing me talk on Spaced Out Radio about crawler humanoids in the Sierra Nevada, including a being you have called, or I have called, Penelope. She recognizes something in that conversation that lines up with her very own strange encounter near Tahoe City about 8 years ago, and she finally decides to share it. She is solo backpacking and knows the area around Mount Dana well. This is a gear test trip before a more serious expedition. Not her first time at altitude. At about 5 in the afternoon, she's on a ridge at roughly 7,000 feet. An outcrop of stone captures her attention. The rock is oddly geometric. When she taps it, it rings. Not like a normal mountain stone, but like a hollow tank. Intrigued, she pockets a few pieces as samples. Now, as she is putting the rocks away and getting ready to hike down to her chosen campsite, she hears a fluttering sound, the kind of noise a pigeon might make when it lands nearby. She turns her head casually, expecting a bird. What she sees instead stops her cold. Standing near her is a praying mantis at least 5 foot tall. It's upright. Its abdomen curves so that it stands roughly chest high to her crouched position. The posture is not purely an insect. In some ways, it's bearing almost human. She finds herself at eye level with it. The mantis reaches out, grabs a piece of food she has been eating, and eats it while looking straight at her. There's no panic in its movements. It is curious, present, and utterly honest in her perception. Then, without drama, its wings extend, it takes off and disappears. In the moments and hours after, she feels extremely nauseous and develops a severe migraine. She rationalizes at first as hydration or from altitude, but the memory of the encounter remains clear as if it happened yesterday. She even tried to get a photograph, but the being was gone before she could bring the phone up. Now, there have been other mantis-type reports out in the Sierra Nevadas. Taken together, they suggest either another form of ultra-terrestrial presence using insectoid avatars or a literal species that can step closer to our layer of reality for brief interactions. The details about the geometric stone with the ring are fascinating. It's hints at buried structures of unusual geology that might be associated with their presence. We move now from a mantis that feeds in front of a human in another kind of feeding entirely. The following report out of Maine involves a slow blood trail, a wounded deer, and a scene that witnesses still cannot make sense of. In south central Maine, about 7 years ago, a bushwhacker spent 3 hours climbing steadily uphill before taking a break. He finds a rock with a good view, eats, reads a bit, and notices a small stream with a short waterfall nearby. On his way to cool off, he picks blueberries and enjoys a moment that is about as peaceful as the woods can get. Down by the stream, he realizes something is wrong. On the stones along the bank, he sees small, fresh drops of blood, bright and shiny. A trail of drops lead along the path that is surprisingly easy to follow. He grabs his pack, curiosity now replacing relaxation, and tracks the blood. The drops increase in size and the number until he reaches a patch of flattened fern and a heavy concentration of blood. This is clearly where something profound occurred. He decides that this is no longer something he wants to be in the middle of and chooses to head out and report if he sees anyone. Hours later, while setting up his hammock at a different spot, he hears a lot of rustling behind him. He turns to see a deer with a massive slash down its side, stumbling and clearly at the edge of collapse. It spooks when he moves, bolts downhill, and goes down about 600 yards away. He assumes it's the work of a predator, maybe a big cat, and leaves it to nature. The next morning, he checks on the carcass. What he finds is not natural at all. The deer is dead, but its organs have been removed and laid out neatly beside the body. The incision along its side is shockingly clean, more like surgical cut than a claw or tooth tear. The organs are arranged, not scattered, and nothing has touched them. There are no obvious tracks, no bite marks on the meat, no signs of scavengers have been feeding. This is not how predators in the wild behave. Even the neatest human hunter does not typically take the time to lay out organs beside a carcass in the middle of the woods, then leave them untouched for hours. The witness admits that he does not want to know what it did. He's still troubled by the fact that in a forest ecosystem completely with mouths, nothing came to eat from such an exposed, easy meal. In Maine, something uses surgical precision on the deer. Now, in our following case, in the Cascades, something uses psychological pressure on a tired hiker over nearly 2 weeks before finally revealing itself. In August of 2009, another solo hiker sets out along the Gordon Peak Trail in a remote stretch of the Oregon Cascades. He plans to spend roughly 2 weeks. The first days are routine. He is experienced and he knows what he can forage and fish, and he expects the usual mix of difficulty and reward. On the 6th or 7th day, something changes. The hair on the back of his neck stands up and stays up. The sense of being watched never fades. He writes it off at first as a mountain lion in the area. That's a rational explanation. Then at night he begins to hear howls that are not wolves, not coyotes, and not bears. The closest analog he can find is the calls of apes and monkeys. These noises continue night after night, coupled with movements around his camp and something rummaging through his gear. He naturally assumes it's a raccoon or a bear. On the 11th day, he wakes to find his food bag, which has been correctly hung in the tree, on the ground, and the line was cut cleanly, not chewed. Cut. All his food is gone. He chooses to continue despite this, relying on his knowledge of edible plants and fish to carry him for the last 4 days. The activity continues until the 13th night, when a new behavior appears. Rocks begin to hit his tent. Not little pebbles from a tree, but deliberate throws. Something is pelting him from the dark. Exhausted and afraid, he finally breaks and screams into the darkness, begging whatever it is to leave him alone. Part of him hopes it's a person who will yell back. Instead, the forest falls completely silent for the first time at night. Then a single scream, louder and more vicious than anything he has ever heard so far. Tears through the trees, or tears through the trees. After that, there was nothing. Utter silence again. He doesn't sleep, but he waits. The next day, he forces himself onward, feeling hunted, feeling as if something is pacing him just out of sight. Toward evening, he stops to rest, sits down, and finally sees it. Between the trees moves a prominent, tall figure, bigger than any man or known animal he has ever seen, gliding through the forest without making a sound. He shouts at it. It turns its head and looks at him. He cannot make out precise details through the brush and the fading light, but he knows instinctively that it's what he has been calling, cutting, and that's been cutting, calling, and throwing stones at him. At that point, something in him shifts. Fear gives way to anger. He throws a rock at the figure, pulls his knife, and charges it. That is not a move I would recommend, but in that moment, he's done being preyed on. The being turns and runs, moving with long, effortless strides that leave him far behind. He chases, but quickly exhausts himself and collapses. Eventually, he backtracks to his pack and camp. After that, the night was quiet. The next morning, he covers the last 10 miles on the trailhead. And as he approaches the end, the forest slowly returns to normal. Birds, songs, insects, small animals. The sense of being stalked drained away. He reaches the car, sits down behind the wheel, and cries. Later, a ranger jokes that there are a lot of Bigfoot sightings in the area and suggests that it was probably a local messing with him or his imagination. But the behavior pattern matches too many Sasquatch styles reports to ignore. Prolonged intimidation, food taken, rope cuts, rock throwing, vocalizations that build and climb with one dominating scream. Once the game is over, the human is allowed to leave. Now, if you've been feeling the escalation building across these stories, we're not done yet. Our ninth case is perhaps the most overt example of a portal or parallel environment I have seen in a hiking context. It involves a single step, a sudden jungle, and a whispered word that sounds very much like gloating. On another trip in Oregon, this time along the old Malalo Indian Trail that runs the ridges of Saddle Blanket Mountain to Oak Ridge, a hiker experiences something that will haunt him for years. It's a beautiful August day, 2 days into his expected 2-week trek. The sky is clear, the breeze is strong, and everything seems normal. He's walking along, enjoying the sun and the wind, when, in the middle of a step, everything changes. The world goes gray and blurry, as if someone had slipped a pair of badly ground prescription glasses over his eyes. As he continues to step, the gray darkens and the blur turns into a chaotic mess of shapes that do not make sense. It feels as if he passes through a barrier. When his foot hits the ground for the second step, the environment snaps into clarity again, but nothing around him is the same. It's night now with no stars. The wind is gone. The Douglas fir and pines have been replaced by dense jungle-like vegetation. The cool mountain air has become hot, heavy, and humid. A continuous high-pitched scream hangs in the air. He feels a surge of adrenaline so intense that time seems to slow down. In 1 or 2 seconds, his senses take far more than they should. Every instinct in his body tells him that he's in extreme danger. He takes one more step forward and then stops. At that moment, he hears a whispered word just over his right shoulder. Gotcha. He cannot tell if he hears it with his ears or his mind. It does not feel directed at him in a way a person would speak to another person. It feels like something talking to itself, pleased, as if a trap had just captured what it was meant to catch. That quiet word is what saves him. Terror hits so hard he feels his heart pause. He gasps, pulls in a lungful of thick air, and throws himself backward, retracing the footsteps he had just taken. And as he does, he looks over his right shoulder and sees an arm reaching for his throat from behind. It is a dark, hairy right arm and hand, thin yet powerful, covered in coarse black hair. The hand has pale ivory spade-shaped nails, clean and well kept. The thumb sits lower on the hand than a human thumb would, closer to the wrist. As he moves back, the thumbnail grazes his neck without breaking the skin. The hand closes on empty air where his throat had been a split second earlier. Then it fades away as he crosses back through the barrier. He takes 2 more backward steps. With each step, the world brightens and the familiar fir and pines come back into view. By the 3rd step, he is standing once again at Saddle Blanket Mountain in a clear daylight and wind. He keeps moving backward in terror. Only then does he see what he passed through. Hanging in the air in front of him is an oval patch the size of a large doorway. A shimmer in the atmosphere that makes the forest behind look like it's underwater. By his 5th step backward, the shimmer thins and vanishes. The woods look perfectly normal. It had taken him nearly 2 days to hike to that point. It takes him 3 hours to run back to the truck. For years afterward, he has had nightmares about what would have happened if he had driven his vehicle through a similar invisible doorway on the road. He studies cases of people vanishing in full view of others and finds many that seem to fit the pattern of sudden, unexplained disappearances. He reads about parallel universes and quantum physics. Nothing quite squares the circle of what he experienced. From an investigative standpoint, this looks and feels like a trap. A fixed portal held in place along a known trail, hidden on one side and evident on the other. Whoever or whatever owns that hand expected him to keep walking. It may have called others. He was only spared because the predator behind him spoke aloud now of its success and gave him just enough warning to jump back. Now we're going to close with something more familiar in terms of category, but not any less unsettling. An upright canine on a Smoky Mountain trail that somehow leaves the witness more awake and more alive than ever before. Now, this final story takes us to western North Carolina near the Great Smoky Mountains in July 2021. Now, the witness is coming out of 2 years of being cooped up and needs solitude. He picks a spot in Haywood County for a solo camping trip, sets up camp on Friday night without incident, and heads out at dawn for a steep hike to beat the summer heat. As he climbs, his breathing hard, focused on the grade and the strain in his legs. At first, he barely registers the dog far up the trail. It is only when he keeps coming closer that his brain begins to flag something is off. The animal is large, much larger than a usual trail dog. As the distance closes, he realizes why it looks so strange. The animal is not on all fours. It is moving forward on its hind legs only with a smooth, confident gait. The fur is grayish-brown. The bulk is comparable to a bear. He looks around and sees no one else in the trail, just himself and this thing on the remote mountain path with no easy exit. Fear rises as he realizes he has never seen anything like this and has no idea what its intentions are. He decides to hold his ground and not make any sudden movements, hoping that if he stays calm, the creature will pass and leave him alone. At approximately 100 feet, it stops. It fixes him with what he describes as piercing eyes, and he has the powerful sense that it is silently speaking to him, reading his fear and confusion. There is no overt anger in its posture. It feels more like an intense curiosity, the way a domestic dog might rush up to a stranger and then pause, studying their reaction. After this wordless exchange, the being steps off the trail and moves into the trees. Shortly afterwards, he is overwhelmed by the powerful stench of sulfur, so strong it makes him gag. He begins to feel dizzy and faint and sits down on a log to catch his breath and gather his thoughts. As he sits, he tries to convince himself that dehydration or heat might have produced an hallucination. Yet the memory of the encounter is crisp. The sensation that the creature knew precisely what he was feeling is hard to dismiss. He heads back to camp, eats, and makes a practical decision. Whatever just happened, he doesn't want to spend another night out there. He packs up and leaves. In the days that follow, he realizes something else has changed. The heavy funk that had weighed on him before the trip had lifted. His perspective on his life had shifted in a way he cannot fully define, as if that brief, intense meeting with the upright, dog-like being had shaken something loose inside of him. Now, from our perspective, this is an immaculate fit with the upright canine or dog man category, with a twist. Now, the sulfur smell suggests some energetic events or overlapping reality. The emotional after effects feel almost like a forced pattern of a break, where an encounter with a non-human intelligence snaps a human witness out of a stagnant state. It's not always about fear. Sometimes the trail throws something at us that also functions as a spiritual reset. Now, when you lay these 10 encounters side by side, specific patterns emerge. Places go unnaturally quiet. Batteries drain at the worst possible moment. Trails that should be predictable will suddenly produce phantom houses, faceless hikers, skeletal beasts, and jungle worlds that are only 2 steps away. Some forces in these stories clearly see us as prey or as an experimental material. Others act more like lifeguards than hunters, reaching in just far enough to keep the human body from smashing into a stone. And woven through all of it is the sense that our hiking maps cover only a thin layer of what is out there. Now, if you spend enough nights in the mountains, sooner or later, you hear that wrong sound in the trees or feel the hair on your arms stand up for reasons you can't quite explain. Most people laugh it off, hike out, and never talk about it. The witnesses tonight did speak, and their accounts give us rare windows into what might be sharing the ridge lines, the ravines, and the switchbacks along with us. If you have walked into that silence yourself, if you have stepped out of the reality of one of the or two strides on a lonely trail, I'd like to hear it from you. Sometimes the only way to see the larger pattern is to gather one hiker's story at a time. So that's it, folks. If you have questions, just put it in all caps and we'll try to answer it for you. Dagnammit. Is it true that 6 people per year go missing hiking in the Appalachian Trail? It's around that. I hear at least 1 or 2 every year. I don't know exactly how many there are. I mean, of course, the Appalachian Trail is pretty long. It stretches from northern Georgia into Maine, and there's a lot of distance there. You just don't hear everything that happens. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it averages out to that many. So yeah, I have had a lot of reports off the Appalachian Trail that I can't explain. So absolutely. Can Squatch, have you heard of many encounters in the woods with faceless people or beings? I've heard a few. What they are, ultra-terrestrial, spirit, someone playing games, I don't know. But I have heard of a few. And a lot of times it happens when people are hiking. Not like something that shows up in your house or somewhere else, but it does happen. Dagnammit, what are your thoughts on hiking in the woods and everything goes silent and then you start hearing the buzzing sound like your head is in a beehive? Well, that's kind of a double-edged sword there. I've had experienced that, with everything going silent, and it's usually that a predator is around. Now, you wouldn't think that insects and other small creatures would recognize something like a predator and just stop making noise. As far as the beehive sound, many times, and I have experienced it, like I said before, it's a portal. A portal may be nearby or about to open or close. I have heard it several times, especially during remote views. Even at locations, I have heard the same thing. So it does happen. They're not always necessarily together at the same time, but look, I've talked about portals in all kinds of different places in the middle of the woods and almost everywhere else. So yeah, I can understand what you're trying to describe. Jose Sanchez, isn't it also true that ghost apparitions many times do not have faces either and no feet as well? Yeah, I mean many times, and I've had that experience. I have also seen photographs of something that looked human that didn't have a face, and the way it acted, it looked like it was probably a ghost or some type of spiritual being or something other than that. But yeah, that is true. Dagnammit, people for years have been encountering this obsidian black cube while hiking and becoming nauseated and sick from standing near these strange objects. I've heard a few of those. It's almost like finding the stairs in the woods or something that really shouldn't be there. But there have been a lot of cases like that where something just suddenly ends up in the woods or anywhere else that shouldn't be there. So, whatever it is, and it does leave its mark and it does affect those who see it, it does happen though. Sir Wolf, do you think the silence is created by our consciousness to hone in on danger? Maybe, the instinctive powers of a human can kick in any time like that. It's like the whole fight or flight sensation that happens many times when people are encountered with something they don't understand, and the fear kicks in. It's time to either move on or stand your ground. But yeah. Jose Sanchez, what's your thoughts on the Bugosphere UFOs? Seeing a lot over Colombia and Mexico. I don't know what to think about it. I did see something written about it. I haven't really seen any photographs yet. I've been kind of busy lately, but I mean, if you have any idea or have any thoughts on it, let me know. Okay. Salute the peculiar. Would you advise against hiking in the on the Appalachian Trail? You know, I had someone ask me that the other day because her son has a likes to go on the Appalachian Trail and other trails, and she tries to warn them about all the crazy stuff. I guess she should be listening to me a lot, but you know, anywhere you go nowadays, there's danger. Even years and years ago, there's been danger. There've been several murders and other strange things happen on the Appalachian Trail. Uh, and a lot of the reason why, because it's got places for people to, you know, to stop and to rest and such, and to sleep overnight. And many times these incidents happen near those places. But I wouldn't advise against it if you know what you're doing. If you're experienced, I wouldn't expect a novice to take that trip alone, especially unless they're with somebody who really knows what they're doing. Tan Squatch have taken many reports of aggressive animal encounters like bears or mountain lions. Very few, very few. I mean, in the natural world, these beings, they try to avoid humans at all possible. I get very rarely do I get of a natural animal or an indigenous animal attacking something, unless it's really hungry or it feels threatened. But other than that, just arbitrarily attacking, it's very rare. Okay. Well, again, I want to thank you all for coming out and listening to me. And all I can say is just stay aware, stay safe, and as always, keep looking into the unexplained. Have a great weekend and have a good night. Thank you.